Hello everyone, welcome back. Chapter 20 of Finding Serendipity. Well done if you've come all this way. I'm Heather Rose. I'm one half of the children's author Angelica Banks. I write this series together with my friend Danielle Wood, and we are up to chapter 20. So as you know, Tuesday had found the Vivacious again and she's off. Soon Vivacious was scooting across the restless sea. Yesterday's mist was nowhere to be seen. The sky was still dotted with stars, but they were fading. The moon had slipped far into the west. When Tuesday looked behind her, there was no sign of the steps she had climbed, nor the vast library, only high green hills rising up from the sea. This time Tuesday was not troubled by the disappearance. She turned to the waters ahead and scanned for any sign of the silverfish. As she sailed, a dawn broke across the sky that was identical to the one she had seen the morning before. It began with the same pink and red spears, the same hushed beauty. And then a beam of golden light shot up into the sky, and Tuesday was beset by the odd feeling that no time at all had passed since she had sailed away from the silverfish. This was, of course, ridiculous, because it had been sunrise when she had made her escape, and here again was the sun rising again. In anyone's language, a whole day and night had passed. Nevertheless, Tuesday had a curious feeling of déjà vu. And then the dark silhouette of the silverfish loomed ahead of her. It was still at anchor. Tuesday's heart hammered in her chest. There was no way for her to hide her approach. Still, she sailed as stealthily as possible, bringing Vivacious alongside the silverfish and securing the boat to the same metal ladder fixed to the side of the ship. No cries arose on deck. No one sounded any alarm. Tuesday climbed quickly, slipping over the railing. She darted again to the side of the wheelhouse and, creeping along its length, peered out over the deck. Tuesday blinked. Was it possible? Everything was just as she had left it. There was Mothwood, hideously returned from the dead, and his men about him. Vivian and Baxter were both in the exact same position as before, as if Tuesday had simply blinked in her hiding place and not slipped away for a whole day. Mothwood scratched Baxter's ear with a malformed hand, his gaze fixed on the crumpled figure of Vivian Small on the deck. "Oh, do let's drop her," he chuckled to his men. "I would so love to see those little wings all bent and broken. Or will she tell me the dog's name?" Vivian, trussed in ropes and held tight by phlegm, was silent. "His name," he repeated, his voice quiet and deadly. Baxter hobbled and muzzled, sniffed the air and spotted Tuesday. Tuesday could see in his eyes that he didn't think no time at all had passed. Despite his undignified bindings, he wagged his tail and indeed his whole body with joy. Tuesday stepped boldly out onto the deck. For a moment, Mothwood's men stared at her, and then they were upon her, grabbing her arms and marching her towards the tower of Carston Mothwood. "Oh no," he sighed, inspecting Tuesday with his mismatched and malevolent eyes. "And what species are you, midget or mouse?" Tuesday said nothing, only gasped at the stench of his breath. It was a damp, rotting smell that seemed to contain scents of mouldering food, dead animals, and the insides of drain pipes. Baxter barked. Mothwood glanced at him and registered the dog's delight at seeing Tuesday. "Oh, so," he said, "the dog does not belong to Vivian Small after all. He is yours." "He is my dog," Tuesday said, with as much courage as she could muster. "You will give him back to me and release Vivian Small." Ignoring her request, Mothwood lowered himself to her height. His voice grew gentle, consoling. "He's a fine dog," he said, a hideous version of a smile spreading across his face. "What's his name?" "No, Tuesday, don't tell," Vivian yelled. "He'll—" Phlegm's great hand was clapped roughly over Vivian's mouth before she could finish. "Shut her up! Make sure she cannot utter a word," Mothwood ordered. Flem took a handkerchief from his pocket, none too clean, and bound it about Vivian's mouth, gagging her. "Due south, lads, full sail on the double," instructed Mothwood, and every sailor, save those holding Vivian, Tuesday and Baxter, leapt to their stations. "No," said Tuesday, "no." Mothwood chuckled. "Oh, so you don't want to go south? Then tell me the name of your dear dog." Above Tuesday's head, the mildewed sails of the Silverfish cracked as they unfurled. There was the screech and creak of rigging taking weight and the yells of sailors at work. The great rattling noise at the bow indicated the anchor was being hauled up. Tuesday thought again of how Vivian had brought Baxter back to life after he almost drowned. "There are people who would kill to have a winged dog," she had said then. "If the wrong person learned his name, then you could lose him forever. It's part of a winged dog's magic. Their name is like a key and you have to keep it safe." As if he could see all these thoughts as he looked into Tuesday's face, Mothwood smiled, and his smile was full of malice. "Not going to tell? What a shame," he said. The Silverfish was leaving the cliffs of Cartavia behind, and to Tuesday's dismay, the tiny Vivacious was cast adrift and left to bob alone on the sea. They were sailing south towards the dark, dangerous waters Mothwood knew all too well. It would be impossible for Vivian and Tuesday to return from there without Vivacious, and even then it would take every stick of Vivian's skills as a sailor. But Vivacious was lost. Why had she come back without help? What good could she possibly do here? "The rat trap!" Mothwood demanded, and one of his crew swiftly brought out a wire cage, affixed to the top of which was a length of rough, fraying rope. "Perfect accommodation for Miss Small, don't you think, girl? Well, come on, men, look lively, in she goes." Vivian's face was unreadable as the men roughly crammed her into the cage, which was just big enough to contain her. When the cage door was bolted, Mothwood made a gesture to his men, who hurled the contraption over the side of the boat. Tuesday ran to the railing. Vivian was suspended just above the waves. "Let her go," smiled Mothwood, and the men let the rope in the pulleys run. The cage plummeted into the depths below. "Stop it! You'll drown her!" Tuesday screamed. "Tell me the name of your dog," said Mothwood. "No," Tuesday said. "Oh, so you want to be stubborn," said Mothwood. "How long will your friend last, do you think?" Tuesday couldn't bear it. The cage was dragging through the water, completely submerged. Tuesday could imagine Vivian holding her breath, pressed against the metal bars, crushed by the sea. "Doggo," said Tuesday desperately. "Doggo." "Doggo?" Mothwood inquired. He looked at Baxter. "Lift the cage," he instructed his men. The men hauled on the rope and the cage was hoisted out of the water to swing just above the level of the deck railing. Still crushed within the mesh and also sodden, Vivian glared at Mothwood with an expression of sheer fury. She sent a grim look to Tuesday and almost imperceptibly shook her head. This was Vivian Small, Tuesday thought. This was the fearless heroine who could get herself out of anything, and Vivian was quite clearly telling Tuesday that she must not give in. "Unbind the dog," Mothwood said to Gum. Gum freed Baxter's paw from the rope about his neck and unwound the wire from his muzzle. Baxter stood quivering, his senses alert. "Hello, doggo," said Mothwood, leaning towards him. Baxter barked in a friendly way. "Sit," said Mothwood. Baxter sat and wagged his tail. Tuesday gulped. What had she done? "Stand," said Mothwood. Baxter got to his feet again, tail still wagging. "Very good," Mothwood smiled. "Bite her," he said to Baxter, indicating Tuesday. Baxter growled. He bared his teeth. He prepared to spring, but instead of launching himself at Tuesday, he launched himself at Mothwood, knocking him over and seizing Mothwood's leg between his teeth. "Get him off!" Mothwood cried. "Off!" The men leapt to their captain's aid, trying to haul Baxter off, but the dog would not let go. Blood dribbled down Mothwood's leg. Mothwood continued to scream. "Let Vivian go," Tuesday said in the most commanding voice she could muster. The cage was dropped to the deck. The bolt was shot, and a shivering Vivian uncurled herself from its confines. Gum removed the gag from her mouth. Only then did Tuesday call Baxter off. The men lifted their captain back onto his feet. After a few moments, Mothwood recovered enough to speak. "You will tell me the dog's name, his true name," he said to Tuesday in a voice that was cold with wrath. "If it is the last thing you do, and it almost certainly will be." Tuesday took a deep breath. She looked up at Mothwood and said, "My dog's name is Mystery with a double R, and if he's your own dog, then he'll take you far. He'll take you far beyond the most distant shores. But no, Carsten Mothwood, he'll never be yours." Mothwood stared at Tuesday with a mixture of admiration and disdain. "What have we here, then?" he said mockingly. "A little poet. Be careful, girl. Many have died by taking me on." Tuesday wondered, perhaps a little belatedly, if it had been a wise decision to break into verse. Mothwood liked to challenge his victims to a round of rhyming couplets, and the price of losing was death. Never in any of the previous Vivian Small books had any of his victims beaten Mothwood at this game. Not even Vivian had ever battled Mothwood in this way. She had used every other skill in her armoury to deal with him rather than fight him with words. But Tuesday had begun. She took a breath and lifted her gaze to his cruel, pallid face above her. "I'll take my chances," she said boldly. "Oh, very well," Mothwood said, his eyes sparkling. "I challenge you to a duel in rhyming couplets. If I win, you will tell me the name of your dog, and he will be mine. And your friend, Vivian Small, will be my figurehead, lashed to the front of my ship until her bones rot into the sea. As for you, well, I'll keep the manner of your death a surprise until then. In the highly unlikely event that you win, then the Silverfish and her crew are yours. Do you agree?" "I do," said Tuesday, though her entire body was tingling with fear. "We proceed until one of us fails," said Mothwood. "I will toss." He drew a coin from his pocket. "I choose heads." "No," said Tuesday, who knew Mothwood's tricks only too well. "Not that coin." She grabbed it from his hand and turned it over. Sure enough, it had a head on either side. "Coin," Tuesday called. Quick as a flash, Vivian dug into her sodden pocket and flicked a coin to Tuesday. It was a gold coin with a mountain on one side and a lion's head on the other, and Tuesday looked at it in wonder. Carefully, Mothwood inspected the coin, and seeing it was indeed a two-sided coin, he tossed it into the air, where it flipped over and over and over, as if in slow motion. And that is where we are leaving it for today. I'll see you back for chapter 21. Meanwhile, if you'd like a writing exercise, have a think about a rhyming poem, one where every 2 lines rhyme. So there's that little verse that Tuesday made up on the spot. "My dog's name is Mystery with a double R. And if he's your own dog, then he'll take you far. He'll take you far beyond the most distant shores. But no, Carsten Mothwood, he'll never be yours." So you see there's a beat. Da-da, 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 da-da. So rhyming couplets are lines of poetry that both rhyme at the end. My dog's name is Mystery with a double R. And if he's your own dog, then he'll take you far. have a think about writing some lines that rhyme like that with that same kind of what we call meter in poetry. The beat is called the meter in poetry. My dog's name is Mystery with a double R. And if he's your own dog, then he'll take you far. So my dog's name is Mystery with a double R. And if he's your own dog, then he'll take you far. You've got to make them match in the beats they have. So good luck with that. You are in for a treat because the next chapter has more rhyming poetry. And if you're a writer, you have to fall in love with words, you have to fall in love with the music of words, and you have to learn to play with language, and rhyming poetry is a really great way to do it. There's also lots of great rhyming poetry you can read, and mum or dad or your carer might be able to find some rhyming poetry for you. The most famous person who wrote rhyming poetry and rhyming couplets was a man called William Shakespeare. And you are going to discover his work, I hope, as you get older. And as a writer, you really need to read his plays and his poems. He wrote 400 years ago, and we are still studying his work today. We are still making movies of his plays. We are still using him to learn about the craft of writing. So getting familiar with Shakespeare, his poetry and his plays is one of the things ahead for you. So I hope you have a wonderful time on that adventure too. But I'll see you for chapter 21. Bye for now.